And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hola y bienvenidos to all of the RBLR sports fans out there. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Rowdies show tonight. And I am here with my host, the one who actually speaks Spanish. I can only say hello. How are you doing? But Leo, how are you doing?
I'm doing, I guess, in regards to how my day's been, it's been pretty good. In regards to the weekend, if we're talking about, soccer kind of terms, it's been up and down. I've seen my Rowdies eventually fall this past Saturday, the first time during the season. We'll get to that more into this episode. And I also seen Manchester City, tie a 2-2 draw against Liverpool, which I thought we should have really won that game by a bigger scoreline. But, it is what it is, and keep moving forward. But overall, I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Soccer was a bit of a heartbreaker this past weekend for me, not just the Rowdies, but now at least two U.S. men's national team players have gone down with injuries.
Oh, yeah.
So, don't even know how that's looking at the moment.
Yeah,
but
that Gio Reyna video, definitely, some sadness when I seen that him turning coming off the field.
That was more than a bummer, but we have stuff to talk about that's a little more close to our physical homes. That is the Tampa Bay Rowdies. As you said, we have to cover two games from this past week when the Rowdies hosted two at home. And on Tuesday, those games were the Rowdies hosting at Al Lang the Villages in the U.S. Open Cup. That was a 6-0 win. And then on Saturday, again, we were at home. The Rowdies lost, unfortunately, to our Florida rival, the Miami FC. Leo, you and I did not predict very well this past week because we predicted that, we would beat the Villages. I guess that's not really a very hard prediction to make, but we didn't get any points for getting the correct scoreline. Neither of us got 6-0. And neither of us gets any points for the game against the Miami because neither of us predicted a loss. And
look at you downplaying the magic of the Open Cup, James. Who maybe the Villages would have got away with the win, but you know what? It's a good thing that they didn't get that win because, as you said, the Rowdies are moving forward. And in regards to Miami, I had a feeling the Rowdies weren't going to win, and I was hoping that they wouldn't lose, but I was hoping a draw or something. But unfortunately, it didn't happen either.
Yeah, it was really negative overall in terms of what we were going for, and I'm sure what all the fans would have liked. But that leaves Leo on 7 and me on 6 for the time being. We will keep everybody updated if you care. You can also make your predictions every time that we have a predictions list out on Twitter. So just let us know what you think, and maybe you'll be a little bit closer than we were this past weekend. Before we get into the actual review themselves, I want to just say, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. That is where you will be able to hear us every week and get your information about how the Rowdies have done. So let's get into those quick reviews before we do our questions and analysis. I will be taking the game against the Miami, but Leo, if you could please start us off with the game against the Villages.
Yeah, definitely. No, the Villages was a midweek game. As predicted, we were going to see some rotation. So in regards to starting lineup, Raiko Arozarena making his first appearance of the season in goal. What a better way to make your first appearance than keeping a clean sheet, right? With that 6-0 win. We saw Timmy Merrill finally get his first appearance for the club. He was the center of that back line with Aaron Ginn on his left, Jordan Scarlett on his right. And in regards to the midfield of the lineup, we saw Jake Arman finally make his first start for the team this season on that left wing back row. On the right wing back row, we seen Deon Harris come in. Someone that I've been excited to look at how he progresses throughout the season. In the middle of the park, we've seen Lawrence Wyke and Etu, who, these are two players who have plenty of energy, give it all every single time they're on the field. And up three, we had Juan Tejada, Greg, and Lucky Mkosana, pair up in that front three. James, we said it before, we were expecting some kind of rotation in this game, and we had plenty of rotation. But moving on to better news, the Rowdies did score 3 goals in each half and did not concede a single one. So that's great to hear. I know Villages are a team in USL League 2, but you can't really let that get to your head or really downplay the level you're going to perform at for this Open Cup match. And James, another great thing to see from this game, both of our new academy signings, they got to play in the second half. And I was looking at the Rowdies social media pages, and they were reposting on the story of the pictures of the academy signings took with their families, with Neil Collins. It's just something great you love to see. Two, players from your academy, two players from the local area, getting their chance to play on a professional level with Tampa Bay Rowdies, with fans surrounding them in the stands. And, what better way to do it with the 6-0 win? Although they didn't really contribute to the goals, it's just really great to see that they did get to come off the bench and make their appearance. But overall, James, if I was going to sum this game up in very short words, it was just complete dominance from first minute to last, something you would expect. Lucky Nkosana getting his hat trick. The man at 36, 37-year-old, he's still doing it. And overall, James, just a really great game, really great momentum moving on in this tournament. And we'll get more into that as we progress with the show. But with all that being said, James, why don't you give me a quick review of what happened this past Saturday night against the Miami FC?
Yeah, so we go from the game against the Villages, which I would sum up as you love to see it, to the exact opposite against the Miami FC, and it's pretty much just you hate to see this. We are going to talk about the starting lineup. I did get to attend this game, so I will go through it very quickly here. And Neil Collins, actually, though, he did not get to attend the game. He was over in Europe working on his coaching badges. He needed to do that a little bit more than during the schedule of the league. So unfortunately, he had to miss out. But John Stead was there to take over as the acting head coach. The starting 11 was C.J. Cochran, Jordan Scarlett, Connor Antley, Aaron Guillen. That's the back group, the defensive line that we have gotten used to. Sebastian Dalgard started at the right wing back. Junior Etu and Lewis Hilton started in the middle. And Jake Arman got to stay in the starting lineup at left wing back. And up top, we saw Tejada, Leo Fernandez sitting more so in behind Steven Dos Santos, but we will get more into all of those permutations later on. The Rowdies did not have a ton of success in creating quality chances this game. It was actually very poor, something to get into, like I said, further along. And unfortunately, we gave up a goal early in the second half, and that was the only goal all day. So that is where we ended, a 1-0 loss to our closest rival at this level. Miami don't have a ton of fan base as far as I could see, but they do have at least enough quality to come to Al Lang and get a win now.
Yeah, and actually, very interestingly, James, that was the first time this franchise, the Miami FC, have ever won a game at Al Lang. So something you hope would have happened, but eventually, it did happen, man.
Yeah, I was most upset about that fact because well, we're going to get into it, but yeah, Al Lang is supposed to be one of those fortress stadiums at the USL Championship level. And that is a word that I will be using again later in the episode. So let's move into the questions and the analysis here. Now, Leo, you did get to see the Open Cup game, so I'm going to ask you exactly how that went as far as you can tell. There aren't too many questions I think that we can take from this overall because we were playing, lower competition, and no offense, of course, to the players who are out there for the Villages, but it doesn't give us a lot of data to actually work with when we're trying to talk about a USL Championship team. So, we saw obviously a lot of rotation in that game. Now, how did the newbies do? And, a little bit more, can you tell us if anybody possibly worked their way into the starting lineup other than just the obvious because we just named the two lineups?
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it yourself, James. Not really too much to look into these games. Obviously, this was a game in which the Rowdies, they had to come in and win it. No excuse at all. This is the team that plays in USL League 2. Most of these players are a bunch of young guns, young players trying to make their way into the professional league. But with all that being said, if I was to pick out some of the new players, Jake Arman, I thought he was really impressive. That man was just giving assists for fun that night. Raiko Arizarena, someone who I feel like he has a point to prove. He only made 2 appearances last season, and one of them came in a final, which, if you're a player and you're making your second appearance ever for a club, you kind of would not want that to be in the USL Championship final. But, it is what it is. So I feel like he came into this match, wants something to prove, trying to show Neil Collins that he can be, still be in a conversation for who will start in goal moving forward this season for the Rowdies, or at least be someone who is could be consistent and someone you could rely on in that net. You talk about Timmy Mel, James. I had him early in the season as the flop of the season, mainly because, he couldn't really not only get into the starting lineup, but he couldn't even make the bench on games in which, we only named one defender in our entire bench. Usually we name about 1 or 2, but he couldn't even make the match day squad. So, but to see him now, get his start in the center of defense, I thought he did pretty good. He did command that back line pretty well. Obviously, he had the help of the always reliable and always, playing with their hearts on the pitch with Aaron Gein on his left and Jordan Scarlett on his right. So, it might have made things easier for him as well. And with all that being said, I thought Greg had a good game as well. I didn't get on the score sheet, but it is what it is. I thought, like I say, he did play a good game. Was trying to be used as a target man. I don't know if players really like playing that way of finding a target man as it did more so last season when we seen Steven Dos Santos come in. But he did his role really well. He created space for Lucky, created space for other attacking players to get into the box. And if we talk about their academy players, obviously they're going to come into the game first ever professional appearance. We don't really know what to expect. The game, by the time they got subbed in, James, the game was already done. The Riders already did what what they came in to do. But I thought they played fairly well. Showed a little bit of nervousness coming in. I mean, kind of what you expect with your first ever professional appearance, right? But they did pretty well. The future is bright if they just stay on the path of developing their game, staying disciplined, giving your all in training. They will make their way, not only with the Rowdies but in the professional career as well. So it was really impressive to see that. And in regards to if anyone played their way into the starting lineup, I think we already got that answer when we named our starting lineups for both games, right? Jake Artman, someone did really good against the Villages in that midweek game. Also got the second start against the Miami FC. Whether he had a good game or not, it's we'll get into that a little bit more shortly. But overall, I would say Jake Artman is probably the only player that worked his way to the starting lineup for the next game. And in regards to Timmy Mel, Greg, and Arizona, those three players, I feel like they'll have to spend more time on the bench and be more of a rotational player this season, and maybe they'll get other opportunities to make a case for breaking into the starting lineup.
Well, that was a thorough review, and I definitely wanted to know about the academy players too. So, we covered that, and those guys, I hope, as you said, they keep playing and training and showing up. Maybe they will work their way into some game day 11s,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how quickly that'll come, obviously.
Yeah, like I said, it's just kind of hard too much to take from it when you're playing against a team like the Villages, where you're expected to win. With all that being said, James, you were the one that watched the Miami game. I did get to watch a little bit of it on ESPN Plus and some of the highlights that the Rowdies put out. But since we're switching over to the Miami FC game and you were there, James, just tell me, man, what happened with the Rowdies against the Miami FC offensively? We didn't create much. What's going on, man? It was our first loss of the season. We're not, we didn't. Although it's our first loss, we're also not winning many games as well. So what's happening, man?
Yeah, I think that this kind of carries over a trend that we've seen, but it has obviously a couple of different reasons in this one from maybe the games that came before it. Up top, I will reiterate, it was Leo Fernandez, Steven Dos Santos, and Juan Tejada. Now, I will say, Leo, you and I have been asking to see Leo Fernandez get a start up top so that Jake Artman can actually move into the left wing back spot. And I think that, possibly this was not the best overall audition for that, that role, but he and Juan Tejada actually started deeper than Steven Dos Santos. So Steven Dos Santos, often I found that he kind of seemed to be a bit isolated up top. He didn't really have a lot of players like immediately around him, and he wasn't getting the ball a ton in very good spaces. So that was one thing. Now, Leo Fernandez and Juan Tejada, like I said, they started a little bit behind Steven Dos Santos whenever we had the ball, let's say, with our goalkeeper or the back line. So they would cut inside a little bit more and fill in positions in the middle of the field so that Jake Artman and Sebastian Dahlgaard might be able to go up the right wings and not just the right wing, but the left wing and the right wing, of course. So they did get themselves into relatively good positions every now and again, but they also did not get off a ton of quality crosses. Now, unfortunately, the app that we use for statistics does not have necessarily just crosses coming in or those crosses which are successful. I find those sometimes, elsewhere on other platforms. But yeah, I wasn't able to see, like I said, how many actually came in overall. But I'm almost certain that this was another game, much like the first half against the Oakland Roots, that we didn't have any that were successful, at least in the first half. I think that in the second half, we actually had a couple more where players were close to getting on the end of it. And then, a good defensive play in the end blocked it, something like that. But Yeah, the attacking play that we are used to seeing from the Rowdies really did not pan out much. And additionally, because we were sitting back because those attacking players were sitting back a bit more, I don't think there was quite as much pressure put on their back line as we're used to seeing when, other teams have the ball. We try to win it back in good positions and then, get a shot off very quickly. We really didn't see a ton of that in this past game. I asked John Stead, the acting head coach, a couple of these questions, and I think that there were a couple of quotes that I would like to just use to pepper in here and maybe help back up what I'm saying here. So this is a direct quote from him, me asking about what he saw from the boys out there on the field. And he said that they controlled large parts of the first half without creating any real cutting edge chances. Although we kept possession and moved the ball well, the game is won or lost in the box. And he mentioned in particular that the Rowdies had 2 shots on target out of their entire 15 shots for the game. So, there is a lot of there. It's really converting these chances that you create and trying to get them in better spots because we've talked about it more than once, unfortunately, so far this season. The Rowdies, just not finishing chances. And I guess that it wasn't even necessarily about, bad shots or shots right into the goalkeeper, but, not putting themselves in the positions where they are able to take good enough shots in the first place.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you talk about how John Stead said we did create plenty of chances in regards to moving the ball and getting it forward. However, the chances you created, it really ended in deflected shots going over the bar or going to the sides of the ball, ended up in corner kicks. Not really anything that's, worrisome if you're the Miami FC defender, because if from what I've seen from the game, they stay compact inside their own 18-yard box. They invited the pressure in, but yet, it seemed like the Rowdies cannot find that final pass or that final play to really break that back line. It just seemed like that all game, they would try to get, a really close side of 18-yard box, trying to find that killer cross, but everything was just kicked out, deflected out. It seemed like nothing was working, James. And, I asked you this, the last episode we did, last game out, we tied, and we talked about, if we're talking about the Rowdies team from last season, if they're playing these 2 games like the way they played recently, they at least get a point or a win. They grind out some kind of result. But, in regards to the Miami FC game, they didn't grind out any points. Is that a worry for you, James?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we're really starting to see some more problems crop up. It's not just the case that, the Rowdies were unable to score, which is what happened when, we had a couple of good chances late in the game against Oakland Roots, for example. But in this case, we did not have, CJ Cochran's amazing goal line saves in several instances to at least get us a point. I would never like to see us lose to Miami, but especially not at home. And maybe it was a problem with intensity. Maybe it was a problem with the way that they just set out to win the game from the beginning. But yeah, Miami had answers to all of the questions that we asked of them, so to speak. That's a phrasing that you hear very frequently when talking about tactics and stuff. But it might really, for me, just be the case that the questions we were asking of Miami were, they were very poor in the end. It was just weak, weak tactics to try and get ourselves into those positions that we want to actually get good actual chances from.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about Miami's approach to this game. I know we talk about how the lack of effect the Rowdies had in the final third, but we got to give credit to Miami in this game too, James. I mean, it's the first win at Outlang, and the way they approach this game, they approached it with discipline in a professional manner, and it worked. They were going to absorb pressure and they're going to hit the Rowdies on the counter whenever they possibly could. And in many scenarios, in regards to how the Miami FC will attack, they wouldn't attack in numbers. It would really be like 3 or 4 attackers going up against 6 players from the Rowdies and hoping that they will get some kind of thing. And when you play that way, when I see a team play that way, I usually start to think if a team's playing for a draw, really. However, that goal that came from Miami is a perfect example of how they wanted to play, hoping for that one golden chance. And we've seen a Miami player just, dribble the ball, and there were about 5-6 Rowdies players around him, not anyone putting really, that much pressure on him, and he just takes a shot. I do feel like CJ Cochran could have done better with that save rather than just, parrying it away into a dangerous area. And, credit to Pierre Da Silva for staying focused, being alert, beating Connor Antley to that rebound goal and putting it in. But to me, once Miami scored that goal, you see how much it meant to them because it showed that they were following a game plan and they knew that their game plan, at least until that point, was working. And luckily for them, it worked all the way into the end of the game as well.
Yeah, the possession really bears out exactly what you're saying. I think that the Rowdies had over 60-something% possession. That would mean obviously Miami had 30-something percent. I don't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, Miami did exactly what you said. They didn't really need to possess the ball a ton. They wanted to just make sure that they kept themselves defensively disciplined, and by God did they. But when they get their chance, then they'll send those couple of players up. It really wasn't anybody, creating a backboard for Josh Perez that I think was making the run originally. There was nobody like offering him the give and go. He just was able to dribble into space, and that can also be chalked up to maybe some Rowdies intensity problems, at least in that portion of the game. And then when his shot is saved, just as you said, Connor Antley is second to react to that because he was already, he was flat-footed when the shot was parried away, and I don't know if he expected that CJ Cochran would hold it, or if he expected that CJ Cochran would push it wide, or if he expected it to just go in the net, but he stopped, and Pierre Da Silva, just as you said, he did not stop. He got on the end of it.
Yeah, and Jason, I want to ask you. I know usually you ask Neil this question, but because of his absence through coaching reasons, you asked Ed instead. You asked him, what did the Rowdies deserve from the game? So I want to ask you here as well. What do you think the Rowdies deserve out of this game? If I could quickly put in my input, I think a loss is a fair result. If you ask me.
I think a loss is a fair result. I think the Rowdies did create some chances where they should have got something out of it, and I think that some better.
I think they were mainly half chances, though, right? Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Some better execution, like let's say the step before the shot. So you get the pass that leads to the shot, and then the shot goes, wherever you want. But you want to get more shots in good positions. That's obviously how you up your chances of scoring goals. And they really didn't. Yeah, they really didn't do that. So I don't think that the Rowdies had a ton of very good chances, just as you said. But I think that Miami did not have a ton of very good chances. In fact, the only really good chance they had is that CJ Cochran wasn't able to hold on to that one shot from Josh Perez. And, is that necessarily down to him? I don't think so. I think that that's more down to the defensive side. Obviously, you are going to face some shots in a game as a goalkeeper, regardless of how good your defense is. But, the second part of that is also Connor Antley, not reacting quickly to the rebound. So, yeah, this goes kind of both ways, and ultimately a loss is probably not what we deserved, in my opinion. But it's totally fair. It's totally a fair result.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you this, James, but if I may bring in a Twitter question, because this question is very similar to what I want to ask you. But at Corrigans asks, a loss stings, but Rowdies are still a very good team going into the busiest stretch of the year. James, do you think the team needs to recalibrate their strategy this week after the loss, or do they need to continue pushing ahead with the current game plan for the next 2.5 weeks and then reevaluate? What are your thoughts, James?
Well, let me organize my thoughts in one way, and then I'll take it in another direction here. So last year, obviously, the Rowdies were a very good team, but they did go through one rough patch in the middle of the summer. Now, Leo, you and I were watching those games, and we were kind of wondering to ourselves, what's going on here? Why aren't we kind of the same thing? Why aren't we scoring goals? Why are we giving up goals? What is this newfound lack of success that we are experiencing? But we had mentioned all along that maybe this could happen, maybe that could happen, maybe he could go with two at the back when we're down and we're chasing the game and we need to get a couple more players up the field. All of this kinds of stuff. So that's something that we need to consider. But I think what we also need to consider about this question is just that Neil Collins likes to play a certain way, and he certainly likes to play with three at the back whenever he can. He thinks that allows him to maximize our ability to defend properly while also maintaining the possession that he does like to generally keep the Rowdies at, even though it's not a requirement for us on every single game. So I don't expect anything to change in terms of the formation. Certainly, I will say that to our buddies at Corrigans. But as for what I would like to see, I mean, definitely some formational changes if we're down and we're chasing the game. That's just kind of normal to see if you can get more players up into the box, get more players up into higher positions. This was also something that John Stead said in the post-game press conference was, the intensity wasn't there until the end, but also he thought that there was a commitment to moving forward that really didn't show up until the last 10, 15 minutes of the game. Now, that's something that you and I have also mentioned before, and, maybe there's something to be said about that. Maybe a 4-3-3 would be an interesting formation. Maybe Neil Collins has, purchased players over the years specifically because they fit the 3-4-3 that he's been working with. So they don't really work in his mind in a 4-3-3. I don't know, but I think that at least when you are down and you need to get a goal because you're chasing the game, you got to consider something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's safe to say that when you're chasing a goal, take out a defender, put in an attacker. It's not something unusual that we see in soccer. A lot of teams do this because they're trying to throw everything forward that they can to at least get some kind of result, right? But if I may, James, I'm going to throw in some quick thoughts real quick. We talk about the loss of Forrest Lasso and how Connor Antley has been chosen to fill in that void because of Robert Castellanos' injury, and he's still going to be out for quite some time. But the reason why Forrest Lasso was a reigning 2-time USL defender of the year is because he was a real leader in that back, and he was just a real physical presence for the Rowdies as well. And not only that, he's someone that commands the team to stay focused from the first minute to the last. Now, I'm not saying he's perfect because he was part of the team that had that rough stretch in the summer last season. However, more times than he would really command his team to stay focused, follow the ball, be aware for the second ball, be aware for rebounds. And I feel like, that goal that the Miami FC conceded, it just shows that, if we don't have that kind of defender that brought a presence like Forrest Lasso does, you've seen, James, how Connor Adley wasn't really too focused, kind of caught, setting still, caught ball watching, and that's what, led Pierre De Silva reacting to the rebound first. And we do know Connor Adley has some pace to him. He could have caught up to that if he stayed alert. And I know it's not totally his fault either, but I'm just saying, once you lose that kind of presence in your back line, it will have some kind of negative impact on your team. Hopefully not too much, but we did see an example of how it possibly can do so. I also want to say this, the Rowdies have also been, arguably the best team the past 2 seasons in the USL. And I feel like if you've been a top team for that long, you have to adapt, or else teams are going to start to figure you out. And we've seen in recent games how teams have been taking the game to the Rowdies with their high press and having plenty of possession too whenever they do play at Outland. You talk about, James, you talk about how Outland's supposed to be this fortress for the Rowdies that, puts the fear in the opposition when they do come to St. Pete to play. However, luckily for the Rowdies, the Miami FC, where, they felt comfortable staying back, but that still, kind of made it annoying in regards to the Rowdies for how they wanted to play this game in regards to delivering crosses in the box, trying to get runs inside the box, instead of leaving. I'm pretty sure the game plan was to not leave Dos Santos stranded in 1v5 situations, right? But I do think that this team, we've seen how Neil chose a different formation, because I think he also sees that we need to adapt this season, because teams will figure you out. But I just feel like that adaptation needs to happen quicker. If not, the Rowdies are going to continue to drop points, and other teams that are finding the groove already are just going to keep them climbing up the table. But with all that being said, James, I do want to mention a couple more questions. Do you think it's valid to use the excuse that because Neil wasn't on the sidelines, that's why the Rowdies lost?
For me, I would not say that that's a valid reason. Now, I know that John Stead and Eric Wilds, the other assistant coach, I actually talked about, very quick aside, I talked to Neil Collins about, what the logistics were of him going to Scotland to continue his coaching training and get the badges up there. But he said that, Eric Wild usually sits in the stands and actually gives them sort of the bird's eye view, so to speak. And, it is the goalkeeping coach who obviously works with the goalkeepers and then on set pieces. And then it's John Stead who will help him out and that kind of stuff. So John Stead, more so than just, kind of helping him out, steps up and is the acting head coach in this past game. Now, to get us back to where we were, is it okay or not okay, but is that part of the reason why we lost, that Neil Collins is out of town? I do not think that is a valid excuse at all, because he was there up until Friday of this past week. That's when he flew out to Europe, and that he obviously had all week to work with them, training on, how to beat and defend, not just score, but also defend against this Miami team. and what their best options were for doing that. In fact, in the press conference, he told me that the way that he looks at it for these games, and maybe he's trying to add to it for his own sake, but the way that I see it is I think that he's telling the truth here. It's 80% about us and 20% about them each game that they set up. So I think that that's actually probably pretty true, especially for a team as good as the Rowdies are. We are one of the destination teams in the USL Championship. We're trying to go and get the best players and bring them here and show that everybody, this is where you want to play, because we can enforce our will on other teams, so to speak. And if we are unable to do that just because he's not there, I mean, hell, coaches get sent off too. I haven't seen that with Neil Collins too recently, but if he did get himself sent off, the Rowdies would still have to be able to continue to execute the stuff that they've been working on all the week prior, and they just did not. I think that is definitely not an acceptable excuse.
Yeah, no, man, everything you just said, I agree with. I just wanted your thoughts on that, because I do think there might be people who, would kind of say some things that, like, because Neil wasn't there, we lost the game. However, I think if that, there's all speculation, but I think if that is the case, that's just a lack of respect and discipline from the Rowdies players towards their coaching staff. So I don't think it's a valid excuse as well. I do want to ask you this, James. I also came across on Twitter after the game, and also days after that game. I've seen people talking about Twitter how, why Lucky Mkosana did not start this game if he scored a hat trick against the Villages. Do you think that's a valid case to make, of questioning why Lucky was not in the starting lineup? Personally, I agree with him not being in the lineup.
Yeah, I think that Lucky Mkusana is obviously, he's a very good player, and I think he is legitimately a Rowdies club legend, especially for, the modern era, maybe not when you take into consideration everyone that has played under that badge. But for Lucky to play a whole game, you have to consider, that he is usually used as a sub, and that is because what his abilities are at this point in his playing career. I don't want to say that he can't run for 90 minutes, because he's obviously 10 times fitter than I will ever be, more than likely. But, he can only do so much when he's going up against players who are just as capable physically as him. So, he's going up against, I think, Miami's defender, Ben Ofemu, he was just signed from Birmingham Legion, who took him from the Philadelphia Union Academy. He's got to be 22 years old. He's 6'3". He's a monster at the back. If you are going to go up against a player like that, you kind of have to have a similar build and a similar physicality. The physicality doesn't just mean, your ability to push somebody off of the ball, although it does mean that. But it also means that you need to be able to run alongside that person for at least, an extended period. And if you're going to start, you probably want to do it for, at least, let's say 45 minutes, if not 50, 60. Steven Dos Santos did that, and he was getting, pretty run ragged out there. So I am definitely not going to say that Lucky Mkosana is, should have started this game. He's a great player, and we need to use him as the super sub that he is. And he can start those games where he will not be, tasked with something as rigorous as, Steven Dos Santos was.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I do think he's still important for this team in regards to making a super sub case. And we've seen last season that, he came off the bench and he saved the Rowdy season in that playoffs to keep it going. But I do think, he'll have that same impact this season. And maybe in Open Cup games, you could rotate him sometimes, or rotate the squad in midweek matches. But any other reason, I don't think you should start him. I just want to mention one more player, James, quickly, and then we'll move on to our man of the match, and then we'll go into our hot take segment. But Jake Arman, someone who we talked about questioning why he is in the lineup after so much hype was going around him during the preseason. He does good against Villages, does an okay performance against the Miami FC. What's your take on him? Do you want to see him start more, or would you like to see Leo Fernandez go back to that left wing back role?
Yeah, so this is what I saw from Jake Arman. Jake Arman was out there and getting himself into some pretty good spots. I think that he also was able to, bring in some interesting stuff. When we saw Leo Fernandez play up top, he was actually dropping back into the midfield and not really getting as much out wide. The way that we're used to seeing him. He was certainly not doing a lot of getting down to the end line and cutting a cross back, and not successfully in this game against Miami. I think that Miami was very good about, handling themselves on blocking crosses. But Jake Arman did cut into the midfield in certain instances from the left wing back spot. What he really tried to do a lot was get up the wing and then try to cross it back to whoever was in the box. His crosses were not as successful, although I do think that they were better than Leo Fernandez's in this past game. What I did see from Jake Arman that kind of ticked me off a little bit was at least twice in the game, he got himself into very good positions when a ball, fell off of one of the defenders' headers, one of the defenders' heads, and it came to him in just acres of space in the goal or in the box, and he was shooting at goal. And both times, if I'm not mistaken, he went near post. One of them he just put right outside of the post, and there it goes out for a goal kick. I believe the second one was deflected the opposite direction, and we got a corner out of it. The first shot was the one that we got a corner out of. That was better, and the second one was very late in the game. We could have tied it up. I was very disappointed. It was Ryan Davis, the commentator, who said, you're taught from a very young age when you're in that position, cut it back across the goal. At the very least, you can hope that there will be a deflection or something like that. If you just shoot it near post, the goalkeeper is always supposed to get it when you shoot near post. Maybe you'll get lucky that he's having an off day or something like that. But also very likely is that, the angle is so much shorter there, you could just put it out. And that's what we saw.
Yeah. James, I kind of lied to you. I want to ask a few more questions before we get to our man of the match. Mainly because I did see some kind of this topics being discussed on Twitter, and I want to address it to our listeners as well. In regards to Sebastian Guazzari, he was benched for this game. I'm not sure why. Do you have the answer on that, or do you think it was just an occasional rotation, or what was it?
Yeah, that one did not come up in the post-game press conference. I do not have any information specifically on why he didn't start. I don't know if it's got anything to do with, maybe a lack of goals recently or something along those lines. But unfortunately, we don't have any specific answers on that one.
Yeah, when my girlfriend was reading the lineup, I'm like, did you forget to read Sebastian Guazzari? She's like, oh, he's on the bench. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it's an in-state rivalry game. But I mean, it is what it is, right? And one more player I want to mention, James, Junior Etu. 2 games back-to-back that he's been in the starting lineup. We're looking, is this something we should see regularly this season, or will Lawrence White make his way back to the lineup?
Lawrence White came in late in the game for Jordan Scarlett because Jordan Scarlett, that is, had a yellow card off of, the first foul that he got called for was something that I thought was understandable. The second foul was absolutely ridiculous, but he did end up getting a yellow card for persistent infringement, and Lawrence White comes on and plays at the right center back spot. So, maybe that was part of why he didn't start. As for him over Junior Etu, I'm not sure that I saw specifically anything from Junior Etu that would lead me to expect that he would start the next game. Now, one thing to consider is, the different starting positions for the players when we, the Rowdies, are in possession of the ball. So again, let's say we have the ball at the back with CJ Cochran. In front of him are Aaron Gee and Connor Antley and Jordan Scarlett. They are spread out at the back depending on where on the field CJ Cochran has the ball, like let's say the left or the right side. And in front of them, Lewis Hilton will be looking to get the ball and spread it around. Of course, that's what he does best. Junior Etu is more of a player who can get the ball and carry it a couple of yards and act as someone that will help out when, in this case, Leo Fernandez or Juan Tejada are cutting in from their from their spots up on the wing and, trying to help out in the midfield. I did not see that Junior Etu did a lot of combinations that really led to anything. So I don't know that I would expect that he would be the kind of person to, put back in there. Lawrence White at least will get a couple more successful dribbles, I think, in a game than Junior Etu, especially based on this one against the Miami FC. So I would probably expect that Lawrence White will get a spot out there. Maybe Junior Etu has more up his sleeve, but I didn't see it just yet.
Yeah, no, same here. When we first signed him, I immediately thought he was going to be a rotational player, someone to provide, rest for players like Lawrence White or Lewis Hill or Jan Ekra. But the fact they made, 2 back-to-back starting lineups made me question, is this some guy that, are we seeing something? Are we not seeing something that the Rowdies are, in regards to Junior Etu being in the lineup? So, he put in, okay performances, solid performances. But as you said, James, I do think Lawrence White does give you that cutting edge thing to provide you more in the game. So I would like to see Lawrence White make his way back. There's nothing against Junior Etu. I do think he's a good player for this team.
And he will have his role to play too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But with all that being said, James, we're going to move on to our man of the match for both games, for the Villages and the Miami FC. James, why don't you go ahead and give me a man of the match for these 2 matches?
All right, so my first one is Lucky M. Kosana. Anyone who follows RBLR Sports on Twitter already knows that I have chosen Lucky M. Kosana. For the second one, there wasn't a lot of offensive power, so I had to look on the backside of the Rowdies lineup and see if there were any players that maybe deserved this. Now, I do want to say Connor Antley had the best stats for everybody on the back line. He, had the most recoveries, the most duels won, all that kind of stuff, but I have to dock him for how he fell asleep on the goal that we gave up.
Agreed.
Whereas Aaron Guillen was at least chasing Josh Perez across the front of the box to try and prevent him from shooting. He did not ultimately get to do that. But the other thing is, there are going to be shots that get off in a game, no matter how good a defender you are. Somebody will be able to squeak a shot past you, and your goal is to make it as difficult for them as possible. And if you can get yourself in the way, obviously, then that helps too. But Connor Antley's falling asleep there means that I will choose Aaron Guillen as my man of the match at the back, because he still did pretty well. Ultimately, not as many individual items as Connor Antley, at least on the statistics side. But I think that he did not fall asleep as much.
Yeah, and James, I hate to be a spoiler, but you and I, whether it's unfortunate or fortunate, we have the same man of the match picks. For the Villages, I have Lucky M. Kosana. Whenever you get a hat trick, you're automatically man of the match, even if you lose 10-3. If you score those 3 goals, you know what? To me, you're the man of the match. Can't really go too much there. And in regards to the Miami FC game, just like you, James, wasn't really anything in the offensive side of the game, so I decided to look at the defensive side of the game. More of like a process elimination, right? Jordan Scarlett, okay performance. However, it did get subbed out, so didn't complete the full 90 for me. That's just elimination in my head. Connor Antley, you said it, gave up on that goal. He does have that pace to recover. Fortunately, didn't take advantage of it and fell asleep on that one. Process elimination from there. He's out. CJ Cochran, the starting goalkeeper, I feel like could have done better with some shots that came at his way, especially that one shot that eventually, was a rebound and led into the feet of Pierre De Silva to get that goal. So he got eliminated. And to me, the only other option is Aaron Guillen, right? I thought he had a solid performance too. And also throughout this game, James, I've seen him yell at his own teammates, to get back on track, to really command them to let's tighten up in our game a little bit and let's play like how people know how we play. Someone who looked kind of annoying and frustrated on there for the right reasons, but he looked like someone that was really commanding and leading that team to, to keep on playing at the level that he knows that they're capable of playing at. And James, I love hearing your man of the match picks, but I also want to hear some of the man of the match picks from people interacting with us on Twitter at RBLR Sports. So let's start with Daniel from the Unsubs at Dan and Danino. He says that Jake LaCava was his man of the match pick. Just kidding. That wasn't his pick. He said Timmy Mel was his pick against the Villages. We have Andres here at AAI_11. He says his man of the match pick was Lucky, and if there was an honorable mention or a second pick, it would be Raiko Arozarena. Lord Mitchell at MT Lauster 2222. He said his man of the match pick was Jake Arman. He has it here labeled as 1B. Clever way to put that, right? And Daniel, he agrees with them. I guess that would be Daniel's honorable mention. He did have a few. Daniel says he had a few assists and a quite complete performance. So just to remind listeners, whenever we do put out posts like that, feel free to interact with us. You may just receive a shout out on the show. So with all that being said, James, let's move on.
We will get into our hot takes here, and I just want to go ahead and do mine. I had mentioned, obviously, the word fortress. So this was Miami's first ever win at Al Lang, something that you said, Leo, earlier. And what else can we say? But Al Lang has not been that fortress this year. Defensively, we are used to them holding teams out. I think that I can't remember for sure, but I feel like last year we only lost one game at home before we got to the playoffs and lost in the final. I think
it was
we lost
against
one
Hartford
game.
Athletic. Yeah.
I was just going to say we lost one game at home against Hartford going up into the playoffs. And when you have that kind of record, these teams, and also we had only 2 draws all of last season because we have already overtaken that this season. That was something else that the commentator said. But, we are obviously not turning this into such as rough a place to play as it was before. You need to, as an opposing team, you need to hate coming to Al Lang Stadium. You need to already have it in their heads. I think that this is something that the players have said in the past when we, do these interviews, is you kind of want to already be one up, so to speak, before the game has actually started. And we are certainly not in their heads. We do not have that vanishing one goal advantage here. It is gone.
Yeah, James, if I may put in my 2 cents in this conversation, I did. I watched a game last season. It wasn't a Rowdies game; it was another USL game. Devin Kerr was on the call, and he said in that game, he was obviously being a color commentator, but he said that in regards to once the playoffs do come around, and if you're a team playing at Outlaying and Rowdies get the first goal, you could just forget your chances about advancing that game in the playoffs because just the atmosphere at Outlaying is very, very different compared to other stadiums in this league. Another thing I want to mention is I am very familiar with the feeling of a stadium not really being the fortress or expendable as it is because, as you know, James, I'm a supporter of the Mexican national team, and there's a lot of talk of the team being played to stop playing at Estadio Azteca because it doesn't really bring the same presence as it used to did in regards to the history of playing in that stadium. So I am very much aware of your hot take, and I do really agree with it as well. But my hot take for this week is going to be, and CJ Cochran, if you're listening to this, is nothing personal. It's just what I've seen this past game and games before. I do think that CJ Cochran needs to start catching some of these shots instead of just parrying them away for corner kicks or rebounds because although James, you and I, against Oakland Roots, we bragged about so much how he excelled in that game, making shortstop saves, reflex saves. It was really, really incredible. However, I do think there were more than one or two times in the game against the Miami FC where I felt like he could have caught some balls instead of just, putting them away for corner kicks or giving them back in dangerous areas. There was I believe the Miami FC had a free kick, and instead of just catching the ball, he just, parries that shot up, punching it up instead of just, carrying the ball or catching the ball. And in regards to that shot that led to the first goal of the game and the only goal of the game for the Miami FC, I do feel like he could have done a better job. If he is gonna, block that ball out, at least put it to a non-dangerous area, which I feel like he kind of did. It was just, Connor Anley kind of fell asleep. However, I do think he also could have caught that ball. So, my hot take basically, CJ Cochran, use them hands to catch the ball, man. You could have saved us at least a point for that game. But with all that being said, James, let's move on to our standings update in the next segment. Why don't you tell us where the Rowdies stand now with that defeat against the Miami FC?
Yeah, so the Rowdies do maintain at least their position in third due to nothing that they did, but we have ourselves on 9 points, still level with Tulsa on points, but still ahead of them on goal differential because Tulsa actually lost as well. They lost at home to Pittsburgh Riverhounds, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Louisville City have 14 points in first place, and Pittsburgh have 13 points in second place. If you look behind us, Detroit City sit in fifth place with 8 points and a game in hand. So they could actually overtake us and move up into third place if they do win that point, or if they do win that game. So if we look very quickly over to the west, Colorado Springs and San Diego each have 15 points in first and second respectively, while San Antonio have 12 points, and that puts them in third place. The Switchbacks and San Antonio each have only played 5 games, so that could affect things obviously out there. And one other thing, Phoenix Rising are actually level with us on points, but because of the placing out there, they are in sixth, and they also have a game in hand. So ultimately, they could overtake us in a whole league standings. But that is all stuff to take into consideration. And I mentioned Tulsa; they are in fourth place. Like I said, level with us on points. Now we have a game coming up with them this weekend. We will play them this Saturday at 7:30 at Al Lang. So got to get everybody out there because the Rowdies really need some support right now to get them into the right frame of mind. All that
gotta make Al Lang that fortress again, man.
That's right. Now we will be playing Tulsa in their second game of this week. Tulsa have a game away to Memphis on Wednesday, so we might be able to actually catch a little bit of Tulsa and see what they maybe will bring to the Rowdies, depending on how they want to line up against Memphis, all that kind of stuff. And I'm also hoping, obviously, that it will tire out some of their players before they come down to Tampa for the week. And I will end it here with just saying, The last 4 games were a loss away to Sacramento, a win at home against New York Red Bulls 2. That was a 3-2 win. A win at home in the Open Cup against a local team from Tulsa, and then a 4-3 loss at home to Pittsburgh. Now, everybody should keep in mind where Pittsburgh are in the Eastern Conference because they're obviously doing very well. So, Leo, I'll turn it over to you to talk about Tulsa in a little bit more depth than we have already covered.
Yeah, definitely. So Tulsa, in regards to the roster, James, you have here that they have a good Salvadorian and a Cuban contingent with Ronald Gomez, Joaquin Rivas, Jorge Corrales, Dario Suarez. And some of these guys won World Cup qualifying. And James, I always tell you that whenever you have a team with international players, whether whether they play for nations that don't really make it to the big stage in regards to a Gold Cup or the final, the octagonal of a World Cup qualifying, or even reach the World Cup stage, as long as you have teams that represent their countries, it just shows that they're playing on a different kind of level. Because out of all the professional soccer players from that country, they are at least seen at the eyes of their head coach that they're the best 23 from that nation. So that's always very impressive to see, and it should always be a threat if you have international players on your team. Do you agree with me on that, James, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. In particular, the Salvadoran players, Ronald Gomez and Joaquin Rivas, they did reach that octagon that you were mentioning. And, they have lined up in some fierce arenas. They played Mexico in Mexico City. That is a terrible place to play as the visiting team. Additionally, when they line up for El Salvador, Estadio Cuscatlan is very well known as that's actually a true fortress stadium. It's very hard to go to El Salvador, even though they're not actually generally on par as a team with most of these others. It's very hard to go there and get a result because they are the fans in those stadiums make it so difficult. And you can, I think that there was a player quote that following one of those games where, it's the only place that he's ever played. Maybe I believe this was actually in Estadio Azteca in Mexico. So I should restate that. But this player was saying that, there is the only place that he's ever played where you can be 5 feet away from a player screaming at the top of your lungs and they cannot hear you. So these are the kind of places that these guys have played in, and they know what it's like to be in a tough stadium. No offense to Al Lang. I obviously love going there, and I think that everybody who goes to these games makes it a great atmosphere, but we are not at the same level in terms of intensity and decibels as Estadio Azteca. So if they can handle that, then maybe Al Lang will be something that they can also.
If I may say, El Salvador has probably been one of the nations in really recently that might have been slept on because usually they're not a team that makes the octagon or makes a deep run in the Gold Cup, but with their coach Hugo Perez, he's doing a really great job with the national team. Their scouting department has done really great to bring in MLS talent that that could also be eligible to play for the U.S. men's national team as well, to bring them onto the El Salvador national team. And it's great to see players in USL playing with that team as well. So it just shows that this team is on the rise, although they might not reach the heights of a USA, a Mexico, a Canada. They are a team that can be a problem for these 3 giants in CONCACAF moving forward. And it's really great to see that they also have players featuring from the USL within that team. But with all that being said, James, I want to ask you, what is your confidence level of the Rowdies getting back on track this Saturday night against FC Tulsa on the scale of 1 through 10? Now, 1 will be no confidence at all. They shouldn't even play this game. And 10 being a lot of confidence. We're gonna win. We're gonna win this game for sure.
So, this one is very interesting because Tulsa win this game and they move ahead of us, obviously, and then they jump up into third place.
Tulsa is a really good team so far, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, well, I that might not be the case depending on, how they do against Memphis. So with the fact that Memphis is going to tire them out, cross our fingers, and the fact that, the Rowdies still should be the best team at home. That is obviously what they're going for. I'm going to put my confidence at a 6.
6. I agree with that, man. I feel like anything above a 6 is just showing your true bias there. But for me, I really do want to go with the 6, but we haven't won a game, in quite some time, really. So I think for me, our producer Yuri's giving a 10. That's true bias right there. I mean, he's wearing a Rowdy shirt, right? Can we really take him without any bias in that confidence level rating? But for me, I gotta go with the 5, James. I feel like, even though Tulsa does have a midweek game, whether that tires him or not, whether that plays any kind of mind games or anything like that, I just haven't seen anything from the Rowdies lately to really prove to me that they'll just, flip the switch and start playing how they usually do. So I'm gonna go with the 5. I might get some stick for that, but that's just what I'm thinking right now, man.
Yeah, they also have J.J. Williams up top, who has gotten off to a pretty good start this year. So, that's something to take into consideration. He's a young guy. He will, get tired as far as he can get tired against Memphis, but it's not like he's gonna, it's not like he's gonna play that game and then turn around and he's gonna be very sluggish. He is still going to run at us, and he is going to use his gigantic body, and he is going to throw people around if he can. So there's a lot of stuff on the field that we have to take into consideration.
Exactly. And talking about on the field, what changes would you like to see for the Rowdies in regards to the starting lineup for this game coming up, James?
So I think for the left and right wing back spot, that is where the Rowdies make a lot of their, chances occur. I think that Leo Fernandez would probably be best moved to the left wing back spot again. I would like to at least see him take up different positions if he starts again up top. But I don't know if Jake Arman, with the crosses that he got off and ultimately those shots that I mentioned, I don't know if he maintains his spot. Leo Fernandez has had a lot more success as a left wing back so far than as a left winger, especially this year. We've seen things different last year to consider, but I didn't see it just yet. So I will assume that Leo Fernandez moves back to the left wing back, and I will be happy with that. Sebastian Dalgard starting at right wing back. So far, he has earned that. I don't think that the game against the game that we played this past weekend against Miami is enough that we should say, like, all right, cut him. Let's go with somebody else. He has still done, relatively well even in that game, and he's definitely done much better in previous games. So keep said Dalgard on the field. Up top, I would like to see Sebastian Guenzati get a start again. I think that, he is due for a goal at some point here, and I don't know exactly when it's going to come, but if you give him more time, obviously then he will have more chances. So let's get him out there and see how he does.
Didn't I tell you, James, that our strikers in Dos Santos and Gonzalez would not reach double-digit goals? And right now it seems like I'm reaching that hot take. Although I don't want it to be true, I do think it may be true. But like I said, I hope Gonzalez does get back in the lineup and also back on the score sheet. But in regards to what I want to see, I agree with you. I think Jake Arman should be moving down to the bench. Now, I do think there is potential with Arman on the left wing back row and Gonzalez on the Leo Fernandez on the left wing row. I do think there is potential that to be a lethal threat that we've seen in preseason. However, I just think that right now you need to get the points with your strongest team, not your strongest team out, but a team that will get you the 3 points. Because if you keep on dropping points at this point in the season, it will hurt you in the long run. That's why I think Arman needs to step out for a little bit. However, they shouldn't really give up on the idea of that Arman and Fernandez and Guillen connection on the left side, because I feel like I said, it could quite to be proved pretty efficient moving forward, just not right now. I do want to see Guenzati, like you said, back in the lineup. In regards to the back line, I think we should keep it that way. But really, it's a head scratcher for me why Gonzalez was on the bench. I feel like there has to be something behind the scenes that we don't know. Maybe possible injury or, wasn't quite feeling something right. However, I do want to see him back on there. And for me, I think that's all I have and what I want to see. I do want to see Jake LaCava coming back on, because he's someone that, for me, has been the best player so far for the Rowdies team. You cannot bench your best player at this point. I do want to see him come back on the field as well. So all that being said, James, we're going to move on to our predictions. We were okay with this last week. Hopefully we do get better this time. James, I will take the first stab at it, then I will let you go. I am looking – I really do think I'm going to see a 1-1 draw. I don't think the Rowdies will get the win yet. However, they'll make plenty more chances this time around. I'm going to go with the 1-1 draw, and I do think Guenzati will get that goal.
All right. So last week you went with a 2-2 draw, if I'm not mistaken, and I went with a 2-0 win. So this week, if you're going with a 1-1 draw by rights, I should take a 1-0 win, but I'm going to throw myself off a little bit of that curve, and I'm going to stick with a 2-0 win. I'm going to stick with my last week.
And that has nothing to do with any bias at all, right, James?
No, I'm thinking,
any false hope of getting back on track.
Well, that one definitely is on there, but I do think that the Rowdies will be able to motivate themselves against a team like Tulsa, who are right behind them, who want to overtake them, and hopefully use the momentum of Tulsa being tired and turn that into 3 points. That's my idea here.
Quickly, James, can you remind me? Will Neil Collins be on the sidelines for this game?
Yes, he will be back in time for the Tulsa game. This past week was the only one that he will be, or this past game was the only one that he will be missing. He said, actually, one more nice little thing from his press conference that I saw him at. He said that while he, obviously wanted to be there for our game, he could not because of these training sessions for his coaching badges. So he was obviously over there, and he was able to take in a game with his dad and see Kilmarnock play, the team that he grew up watching. So, that's a cool little detail that I wanted to throw in there. We will. Yeah, exactly. But he will not be able to see Kilmarnock this weekend. He will be back in town to watch us play against Tulsa and oversee things there.
Yeah, so let's welcome, Neil Collins back from his very short vacation or, very short trip to Europe to get his help with this coaching license by filling up Outlang, man. When you get people there, I'm going to try my best to be there. I really do think I'll be there this Saturday. I do want to see the Rowdies get back on track. But with all that being said, we're going to move on to our next segment, our One More Thing segment. Listeners, I want to remind you that liking and subscribing is free. However, if you feel like you need some new clothes, some new threads, you can always support this podcast by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com, and you can check out all the designs that our amazing producer Eureka Wheeler has cooked up. We have T-shirts, we have hoodies. I'm pretty sure he has a lot more cool things loading up for all of our listeners to purchase if you would like. Also, if you do purchase some stuff, or the link in the description from wherever you get your podcast platforms, be sure to include the promo code COYR for 10% off your purchase. Who doesn't love discounts? I've never met someone who does not like discounts. If someone doesn't like discounts, I don't know what to tell you, but I would certainly love 10% off my purchase for anything in life, for that matter. And with that being said, we do have some news of who will be playing in the next round of the Open Cup. James, would you like to tell our listeners who will be playing against? I think they might be very interested in this.
Oh, they might be. I know that I was. So we are not previewing it this week because of the timing of the game. It will come out next week, but we will be playing Orlando City in the next round of the Open Cup. Now, there has been some back and forth as to which stadium that they were supposed to play at. At this point, as of recording, it has been announced that we will be playing at Exploria Stadium, which is the one that Orlando City usually plays at, and the one that I happened to see the U.S. men's national team play against Panama at. Now, maybe we can get some good luck on my side the way that we did when the U.S. played Panama there too. So I do want to mention also the Miami FC drew Inter Miami, and it will be another USL Championship versus MLS clash, and that will probably lead to whoever gets drawn into the fourth round, because I believe that the way that it's divided up by region will mean that Florida teams continue to play Florida teams until they are moving on out of the state. So yeah, everybody, please, if you can, get out to Orlando. There will be a link sent out from the Rowdies to buy those tickets. If you can go, I would suggest that everybody do it that way, because then we can all be together, obviously, and we can all make sure that the Rowdies know that there is a big fan base willing to travel to see them play maybe are not our most heated rivals because we haven't played them in the same league recently, but I would still say they are very, very hated rivals anyway.
For sure, man. As you said, James, we need to make the most noise in Orlando.
And what a story! April 20th for everybody.
Exactly, man. I mean, what a story it will be, for the USL team to overcome an MLS team. It's just the magic of the Open Cup, as we're calling it here at RBLR Sports. Another news, James. Jake LaCava was nominated for the USL Player of the Month with his excellent performance showing this past month with the Rowdies. The polls are closed. I did get to vote. I'm not sure if James, you got to vote, but the polls are closed, and I voted for Jake LaCava. And results will be available this Thursday to find out who will be voted as a USL Player of the Month. Hopefully, it's our very own Jake LaCava. He's a very exciting player. And before we get people out of here, James, you have something you want to say here, maybe about a special article or a special story that you have written for RBLR Sports?
Yeah, that's right. So something that I just mentioned here, I went to see the U.S. men's national team play against Panama in Orlando. We have talked about this a couple of times on previous episodes, but I finally got around to writing up about my experience about it. Please, nobody tell Eureka about how late I was for his writing deadlines, but I got it in. And it is published now. If you would like to read it, there will be a link in the description. I tried to capture more so the atmosphere as opposed to the game itself. Everybody can read 1,000 game write-ups and, what player did who did what kind of things and who did poorly, all that kind of stuff. But if you would like to feel more of what it was like and, more so what it was like from a fan experience, then please check that out. I think that it was, it was the way that I felt leaving the game. And one word that I used a lot in there was elation. So please check it out. And, maybe you'll feel just as good as I did.
If I may say, James, I have not read it yet, but I have read your past articles and they were all really, really great. And our own producer, Yuri, even like this one, I always take his word for it. So I am looking forward to read it very, very soon. And I will say, attending national team games are always, always very special. I've attended watching the U.S. play and I watched Jamaica play, and it's just a great overall feeling. So I can't wait to read this detailed experience that you had watching the U.S. men's national team play in Orlando. And yeah, I'll get to it. I'm pretty sure our listeners will get to it. But with all that being said, once again, we want to thank you, listeners, for listening to this podcast, supporting this podcast. And also don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can do that by finding us on social media at RBLR Sports. If you want to interact with James or myself on Twitter, you can find me at Leo Santos _. James, where can these people find you?
I am at RBLR James K, and also you can use the hashtag AskRBLR. Corrigan's is the latest group to ask us, a couple of questions about the game. So if you have questions that you think that we can answer best, we are here to do that, and we would obviously like to interact with everybody for the Rowdies and the Bucks and the Bandits and the Rays and the Lightning. Please check us out and let us know what you have to say. Finally, if you can, please like and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, whatever podcast streaming service you use, we are there. And we will also be on YouTube.
Yeah, and with all that being said, I guess, James, we hope the Rowdies do get on back on track soon, build some momentum up for that next week, midweek game against Orlando City. So with all that being said, come on, you Rowdies.
Come on, you Rowdies. Let's go.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.